The views and opinions of this broadcast do not reflect the views and opinions of Armed Media, New Productions and its affiliates. Enjoy the show.
Good evening and welcome to the Leadership with Biana Kovic show. We are live from New York City. It's 9:03 p.m. and thank you for being with us tonight. Our topic, leadership, focuses on leaders such as yourself. We believe that leadership is a skill that can be learned through practice and awareness. Our number is 1-800-508-5431 and is open for your calls. Our very special guest tonight is Andrea Reese. Andrea is a professional photographer and success team leader. Andrea's photos have appeared in the New York Times, Daily News, and many other media outlets. Her success team groups have helped over 300 people discover what they want to do with their lives. Previously, Andrea was a classical singer and actress who wrote and performed the acclaimed one-woman play about Jackie O, which ran for 6 years off-Broadway. Andrea, good evening and welcome to the show.
Yeah, welcome. Thank you so much. It's great being here tonight.
Thank you again. I'm very happy to have you on the show. You are the professional photographer and the only New York City certified facilitator for the success team groups created by Barbara Sher. For some of us who do not know who Barbara Sher is, could you share a little bit about Barbara Sher and about her books and success team groups that she created?
Sure, I'd be happy to. So Barbara Sher, and her name, by the way, is spelled S-H-E-R, just so everybody knows in case they want to look her up. But she has, for many decades, has been working to help people figure out what they really want to do with their lives. And she has been often referred to as the godmother of life coaching because she was doing this way before the word even existed of life coaching. She's written many books, but the most popular one, the most known one is called I Could Do Anything If I Only Knew What It Was. She invented success teams, which are small groups that meet for 2 months. She invented those teams many years ago in 1972, and those came right into her book Wishcraft, which is what's used for the success teams. So she's been on Oprah and CNN, all kinds of TV shows, and has done lots of PBS specials and has quite a remarkable career.
And the book is Wishcraft, not Witchcraft, right? So it's W-H-I-S-H craft.
Yes, that's
because a lot of people are, what is it, a witchcraft?
That's a different book. No, this is Wishcraft, so it's just W-I-S-H-C-R-A-F-T, craft. And by the way, just so people know, Wishcraft is available free online. You just go to wishcraft.com. So if anybody gets inspired and wants to dive right in, you can go to wishcraft.com and read it.
And so the way I understand the success teams groups are based on that particular book.
That's right, yes. You could say they're based on all of her books because the groups reflect her approach that also shows up in her books, but Wishcraft is the book that corresponded with the same time that she was starting success teams.
So can you tell us a little bit more about the book itself and the concept that she talked about in the book and that are used also in the group work?
Sure, yeah. So the success teams the book actually I'll start with, they join directly together, but the book starts out with a few chapters with lots of different exercises to help people identify what they really love, because Barbara believes that what you love is what you're gifted at. And some people find that hard to believe. They might think that if they haven't been doing something all along, how could they have a gift at it? But Barbara believes that when we love something, we're drawn to it because it's part of who we are and it's part of our DNA, and in it there is where our gifts are. So the book encourages people to ask themselves, what would you do if you knew you couldn't fail? And just really listen to the first answer that comes, because a lot of times fear will come up and then people think they don't know what they want because they're afraid of it. So the book helps people figure out what they want and lay out steps towards it. And book believes that people need encouragement more than and support. People need deadlines, and that's really where it's coming from. It's very down to earth and funny, often very funny too.
So I'm going to just a little bit talk more about the book. Would you say that if someone has loves to paint, but he ends up being a lawyer because his parents believe that law is what he or she should be practicing, that in some respect painting will come through in what that particular person end up doing in life?
Definitely, 100%, yes. And it's funny that example you gave, because that's an example I use in success teams, that if let's say someone is born into a family of lawyers, or a family that expects people to become lawyers or similar fields that might seem more practical, it's definitely that person is always going to be seeing things as an artist, whatever they do. So if they become a lawyer, they're going to be the one, if they have to, let's say, make a flyer or something, it's going to look extra nice. They're going to have the artist's eye throughout their life. And the thing is that Barbara would not say automatically that that person should try to make art how they earn their money, because there's some careers where it's really hard to earn money in that career, and sometimes can put so much pressure on it that it's no longer enjoyable. So she doesn't believe the thing of, if you do something that you love, you'll automatically make money. Not at all. But she says that whether or not you make money at something, you have to do it anyway, because if you don't, you're going to be missing a huge part of your life, and the world is going to be missing a huge part of you that you're gifted at. So you find a way to do it. So it might be that you have a day job that doesn't take too much energy out of you, and then the rest of the time you focus on your art. Or she gives the example of somebody who wants to be a poet. I mean, telling them do what you love and the money will follow, honestly, could end up being very disappointing and might put so much pressure on them trying to earn money with it. Whereas they say to themselves, okay, I'm going to write poetry. I'm going to come home maybe every day and write for an hour, and I'll go to poetry retreats and I'll write on the weekends. Maybe they'll even teach a poetry class somewhere. They may enjoy it much more than if they try to make it their main career. And that's not to say that nobody should have careers in the arts, but I'm just saying, she doesn't say that everything automatically leads to money, but that money is not the reason to do or not do it. That you have to do it anyway because it's so important to you.
So what happens if, let's say, I'm a person that loves art, loves to sing, loves to dance. I have many loves. How do you know which one is really the love that you have in your DNA?
Well, you have lots of loves in your DNA. It isn't just one. People have many, many loves in their DNA. In fact, in my life, I've pursued a lot of different of my loves. I started out as a singer, so music was my main thing. And then that went into theater, so it went into theater after music. That was a separate field. And then after theater, I went into photography. So we all have many, many things that we love. And Barbara Sher would certainly say, try them all. Take a dance class. Take an art class. Go to the park with a pad of paper and some pencils or pens and draw something. Get these things all into your life. You don't have to choose one.
So what you're saying to us, we have many talents within our DNA, and they will sometimes happen earlier in life and sometimes in our mid when we're mid-age, or sometimes later in life, and we should allow ourselves to experiencing when they actually really arise in our lives. Is that true?
Definitely. And Barbara wrote a book called Refuse to Choose, and that is many people are told that they should choose one thing, and that's sort of a message that a lot of people get. Many career counselors might say it, but this is something that Barbara does not agree with. And from running so many groups myself and experiencing people with their different interests, I see how important it is to explore anything that sparks you up. And by explore, I mean, it may mean just taking one class, and that may be all that you want. But that may lead to other things. It's hard to know until you actually do it. And so some people spend a lot of time planning to do something without trying it. And Barbara would always say, try to get the taste of it as soon as you can. See how it feels.
So our show is about leadership. And I'm curious, has Barbara mentioned in her book, does she believe that leadership can be part of one's DNA? And if so, how would one recognize that? Because our premise of the show is that leadership is something that we learn through practice and awareness. But if Barbara is saying that you are sometimes born with certain things, would she say that leadership is something that you are born with too?
Well, if it's something that someone loves involves leadership, like, okay, for example, I had someone in a success team who wanted to run a wellness center. So that is a leadership position. So in that case, yes, that's part of who she is. And I would say that's in her DNA. She wants to be a leader. So if someone wants to be a leader, and that could be multiple fields. I mean, there's so many fields that you could be a leader, and then that you could say, yes, that's part of who they are, and it's in their DNA. And we all know little kids who we meet sometimes, certain kids, and we'll say, wow, that kid is going to be a leader someday. Because they have that quality. They like to run things. They like to be in charge. But then there's other people, and that's not what they enjoy. They really don't want to do that. So it's an individual thing, and I think all we need to be guided by is what we love. It's really that simple.
So another concept in the book, I'm not sure if you mentioned, is resistance and isolation. And I know that you use that in your group work with your teams. Can you talk to us why resistance and why isolation is so important in this particular work?
Yeah, I would even go so far as to say these are the two most important things in this work that people learn to navigate. So resistance, and I know I won't be able to hear a response from the listeners right now, but what I will ask is, have you ever gotten really excited about something and you felt finally you found what you want to do in life and just full of energy and you can't sleep at night, you have so many ideas, and then a short time later something happens and all your energy goes away and you think you've lost interest in it and then you stop doing it. And a lot of times people, it feels realistic, like they think they really have come to their senses. What was I thinking? But what it usually is, almost all the time, is resistance. And all these groups I've run for 20 years, I've probably met about 300 people now and put them through the groups. And I haven't met a single person who didn't encounter a significant amount of resistance when they started going after the thing they really wanted. Because it's a really deep part of who we are. And it can feel vulnerable to decide to go ahead and put it out there in the world. And so resistance tricks people into thinking that they don't want it anymore. And there's other symptoms of resistance that Barbara lists in Wishcraft. For example, suddenly wanting to just clean your apartment or clean your house instead of doing the thing that you thought you wanted, or watching TV a whole lot. There's all these different things people do to avoid that fear of going after the thing that they really love.
And if I understand correctly, resistance can come from outside. People can, if you go to a friend or parent, say, I want to, fly a plane, they can shoot that dream, and that could be potentially a cause for your resistance to continue doing or pursuing your dream.
Absolutely, absolutely. And I always say to everybody in my groups, be very careful who you talk to about your dream. Choose carefully. Choose people who you know support you, because I'm sure that most of us have had the experience of being really excited about something and then having someone say just the wrong thing that it feels like a balloon had a hole popped in it. When I was writing my Jackie Kennedy play, when I started writing it, it was going really well. I was really excited. And then someone said to me, hasn't enough been written about Jackie Kennedy? And I couldn't write it all for about a month. It completely popped a needle in my excitement. And so these dreams we have can be kind of fragile, and they have to be nurtured, and you need to take really good care of them and keep people around you who support you. And if you know that your parents are going to say something negative, don't tell them. You have to protect your dreams, and that's partly why whether you're in a success team or whether you're in a class, you want to get yourself around people who understand your dreams and who are going to be excited for you.
And who give you, would you say, active support?
Active support, absolutely, but not tough love. This is not about being tough. This is about being very warm and supportive, and in an upbeat, friendly way. This is not sort of like being a drill sergeant by any means. It's very different from that. I think.
So I believe that Barbara said, "Praise makes us brave," right?
That's
I
right.
think one of her say. Could you talk to us a little bit? Because it seems to me nowadays, when we talk about leadership, people see one leader, tough person, know it all. But, and then other people perceive leaders as someone who is very collaborative, very vulnerable, very open to feedback. And it seems to me that praise makes us brave is similar to that concept of being open and collaborative and supportive. Would you talk to us a little bit about that concept, praise makes us brave?
Absolutely. I think that we're very social creatures, we human beings. We depend on each other, and I think sometimes a little thing can happen. Like let's say you're having a bad day, you just don't feel good, and let's say you're on the subway, and the person next to you just says something nice to you. That can actually change your day. I think we've all experienced that. Praise is very, very powerful. And when someone is, and this goes also into isolation, another quote of Barbara is, isolation is the dream killer. Because a lot of people think they have to do something alone, and then they don't do it because they don't understand why they keep getting stopped or blocked when they're trying to do it all by themselves. And that goes again to being social creatures. We need support and we need praise, and with it, people feel so much stronger and so much braver, and they go so much further. And I see this over and over again. I see people come to success teams who hadn't been doing what they wanted, and they've been so intimidated, and they were blaming themselves. They were saying, what's wrong with me? Like, why can't I do it? If I really wanted, I would just do it. But the just do it thing doesn't work when you're by yourself, because then when the resistance comes up, it's like a stone wall in front of you and you can't move forward. But if you know that you're going to see a success team or a good friend who's going to ask you how it's going, and when you tell them what you did that week, they're going to say, oh, that's fantastic. What are you planning to do next? That's going to be completely different than when you try to do it on your own.
And I understand that part of the exercises is, well, actually, most of the exercises do have deadlines in your groups, correct?
They do. They have deadlines, but I don't enforce them like a drill sergeant. We make the drills, we make them, and we ask each other about them. But let's say someone comes into a meeting one week, and each week they write down what they're going to do for the next week. And let's say they come in and they say, you know what? I didn't do anything this week. All we're going to do is we're going to take the steps that we're going to do that week, and we're going to move them to the next week. We're not going to give them a hard time. We're not going to make them in any way feel bad about themselves. We're just going to say, you know what, you can do it next week, and we'll check in again.
And you have a lot of people that will come and, because our lives are very busy, that's the fact. And, sometimes we do want to do, and we put the best effort to do it, and we never come around doing it. Do you find a lot of people that they are potentially missing the deadline, or are not meeting the deadline, or or having lives so busy to forget about deadline?
People don't usually forget it because they have to write it down, and they also get everybody gets a phone call in the middle of the week from another person in a group to just see how they're doing. So with all those things going on, people don't that often miss deadlines. And as far as business goes, we make sure that we set goals that they can realistically do that week. So there may be one person who only has enough time to, let's say, make one phone call and look up a few things online. And there may be someone else who has time to do many more things. So we look at each person and what their schedule looks like, what their week looks like, and make sure that the thing about goals is you don't want to make them too big or too small. There's a balance where big enough that you're taking steps forward, but it's small enough that you're not so intimidated that resistance stops you. And so that's what we're always looking at in each other. So I'm always asking them, how does that feel for this week? The goals that we've just set, talked about with you. Does that seem like a good amount, or does it feel intimidating, or do you want to do a little more? And we really feel it out and make sure that it's something they're going to be able to do.
So basically, they're specifically tailored to the person that you're working with.
Yes, that's right. That's right. And there, sometimes there are people that don't do that much. I had somebody in a success team a long time ago, and she really had a dream of having her own column in her local newspaper. She didn't do that much during the 8-week program, but something I've learned is that even when someone is not doing a lot of the steps that they set out to do, a lot of things are percolating inside them. And it doesn't mean they're not going to do their big goal. It might just mean that they're not quite ready in some way, but that sometimes when the 8 weeks ends, I'll hear from them later, and they'll say, guess what, I have great news, I did it. So this person, after the 8 weeks ended, she found a writing coach, and she connected with the local paper, and she got a column. But it took more time of it inside her. It took more percolating. And she wrote down all the suggestions she got. And then when she was ready, she started doing them.
And what's so interesting about it, when I was in many groups, and sometimes, people are kind about when you're percolating things within, and sometimes people are just kind of getting straight down on you. But what I'm noticing is that you guys are very kind and very accepting to the person that you're seeing in front and what that person is going through. So how then do you measure that particular person's success in the environment, in the group? How do you know that she has in particular at least succeeded within those 8 weeks?
Well, I think mainly that's just from experience, from doing it for so long. I know sometimes that someone, even when they seem like they're not doing anything, just being in the meetings every week and getting the phone calls in between, things are percolating. And I trust that because I've seen it happen too many times not to.
So you're saying it doesn't have to be something, it can be within sort of a goal reached, but doesn't have to be really something that is without, like, very visible to others, right?
No, and a lot of goals take longer than 8 weeks anyway. If someone wants to start a wellness center, they probably won't be able to start the whole center in 8 weeks, but in 8 weeks they certainly would be able to do a sample class, gather together some friends, set up a wellness class, maybe pull together a few people they know in wellness fields. It's back to the idea of what Barbara says, that you need to sort of get the juice of it or the honey of it, the thing that made you want to do it. You need to get a taste of that early on. So a lot of people might spend a huge amount of time making business plans and mission statements and planning without getting the taste of what they want. She would say, how can you get it as soon as possible? What can you do now? Because that's what's making you want it. That's what's giving you the energy. And sometimes, honestly, I think business plans, when they're drawn out for too long, are a way of avoiding doing the actual thing.
Got it. So the groups are 8 weeks long. And the way I understand, the week 7, you do something which is called the idea party, correct?
That's right. Yes. Yes.
Can you tell us what that is and why is that so important? Because I understand that that's a big concept.
It is. What it is so they meet once a week for 6 weeks, and then the week 7 comes up, and they have this fantastic potluck brainstorming party, and everybody invites friends. And in the beginning of the party, each person in the team talks about what they've been working on in the group, and then they open the floor and ask for ideas. And we do the ideas in a special way. I encourage everyone to say any idea that comes into their mind. It may seem like a crazy idea, but anything that anyone thinks of, I say just go ahead and say it. Don't hold back, because even in a really crazy seeming idea, there are often things that are useful. And then we take a break in the middle and we eat food and chit chat. By then everybody's all excited and they want to talk. And then after the break, I open the floor to any guests who wish to have a turn. I don't put pressure on the guests at all, but oftentimes after they've seen the people in the group get so many ideas, they want to have a go at it. And so that's how the party's structured. And in terms of the 8-week program, it comes at a good time because the team graduates in the 8th week. And most teams choose to continue on their own afterwards. And so when they have the idea party, they get a whole lot of new ideas from the guests at the party.
So, and Andrea, what are the projects that you had, that came out of that, of the success teams? I'm just curious. Can you name a few projects?
Yeah. Quite a few people have written books. I had one woman in a team who had worked in corporations, and she really wanted to write a book about how to get out of corporate America. And she did. Her name is Pamela Schillings, and she wrote a book, I think it's called How to Escape from Corporate America. The book did really well. It ended up on a lot of bestseller lists. And what happened in the team is that she mentioned that she wanted to do that, and she started out getting a job for it was, I think, about.com in the New York section. And she started doing that. She was having a great time with that. And then just started gathering together the pieces for the book, and a bit at a time. I've had a lot of writers and teams. And I think that quote about isolation is a dream killer, in a way applies to writers more than most other people, because writing is extremely isolating. And there are so many people who want to write a book and they never do it because they don't have enough people to they need to be in writing groups. They need to take classes. I always say to writers, You can't just sit in your apartment and hope to write your book and then kick yourself because you're not writing it. You need to find support as a writer.
Interesting. So now going back to you, you led these groups for the past 20 years. Am I right about it?
That's correct. Yeah, 20 years.
It's a long time. So you've been a leader of these particular groups. What led you to take on, this particular role to be facilitator of? How did you come about?
Well, when I came to New York out of college, I had read Barbara's book Witchcraft in college, and it had a huge impact on me. And I moved into New York City to pursue my goal of being an opera singer. And I got incredibly intimidated by the city. It was just overwhelming. And I found myself intimidated by every step of trying to continue with my singing. I couldn't even get myself to find a teacher, a coach, anything. And so I ended up writing a letter to Barbara Scher. And I said how much I loved her book and how I would love to meet her someday and how great she was. And she wrote back and she said, I suggest that you join a success team. It'll really help you to get going. So I did, and I loved it. The team was so good. I think in the first meeting, they told me by the second meeting to come back with some names of voice teachers I could study with. And then by the third meeting, I had to make an appointment and meet somebody. And then, by the end of the 8 weeks, I had a singing teacher. I had a vocal coach. I was planning a recital. And I wouldn't have done it if I hadn't been seeing those people every week, because we all have better ideas for each other than we do for ourselves. You know how that is.
Yeah,
we all do. And so when you have a whole room full of people giving you ideas, it changes everything. So for working for Barbara Scher, what happened is I was in that success team, and then a few years later I was in another success team because I got stuck again. And so I went through another 8 weeks, and again, it was absolutely amazing. And then I was teaching, this is a whole other thing, but I was teaching belly dancing, which I did since I was a kid. And Barbara Scher came to my belly dance class. I told her about it. She came. And she told me that she wanted to take an assistant. And I was in another job at the time, so she wasn't even asking me to do it. She was just asking me if I knew anybody. And she was describing it, and I said, oh, my God, I want to be your assistant. Are you kidding me? I mean, she had such an impact on me already. And so I started working for her as her assistant and then continued for 17 years.
Wow.
And during that time, I think it was about a few years in, she said, the New York success team leader is not going to be doing it anymore. I really think you should do it. And I thought, oh my God, I was so intimidated. I thought, oh my God, I'm going to represent Barbara Scher. I had her up on such a pedestal, and she kept bugging me about it for a while. So finally I started. I ran my first group, and I was so scared before the first meeting. I couldn't even sleep the whole night. I was so terrified. And then I ran the first meeting, and it was so exciting. I just loved it so much, and I just kept going.
So besides Barbara Scher, did you have any other role models, or did you read books how to do it, or you just kind of naturally allowed it to happen for you?
Oh, in terms of my different things I did for my career?
Yeah, like in terms of like leading the groups.
Oh, leading the groups.
Did you look up another, do you have another, any other role models that you thought, maybe I want to lead the groups like she does or he does?
No, I think it was pretty much 100% Barbara Scher. What she said, what she wrote in her books, really spoke to me. It worked so well for me that I ran it right directly from the way that she wrote it and designed it. And I mean, I read lots of self-help books over the years and things like that, but for actually leading success teams, it was definitely her, coming from her.
So what qualities do you think you can transfer from Barbara Scher's book to directly to leadership? Like, what do you think in her books, what concept correlate to being a good leader?
Well, in success teams, a lot of it is about collaborating with each other, listening to each other, respecting everything that the other team members say. So, for example, let's say someone says their goal and it's something that sounds wacky. In a success team, you would never say that. You would never say to somebody, oh my God, are you crazy? Nobody could do that. Never. You always give every goal 100% respect. And I think for any type of leadership, that makes sense. And that's the kind of leadership that I like, the kind of leadership that respects collaboration, that respects what everybody says, so that even if someone working for someone has an idea that the other person, maybe they already tried it and it didn't work, their idea still needs to be respected and listened to. And the person could say, you know, that's a really great idea. And they could even say, we tried something a little bit like that, but let's talk about it more and see what we can come up with. You want the person to feel valued and heard.
And what I'm hearing also, you want to be very receptive to what other people's needs are or maybe thoughts are, and not cut them off and say, you know, that's completely insane. You know, let's move on to something different. And that thing that really kind of, I actually taught groups myself, and every time I would finish a group, like I also had sleepless nights too. I spent a lot of time reflecting and kind of reevaluating how my groups were doing. Did you do the same thing? Did you use maybe like reflect on the groups, or did you like lessons learned from one group to transfer to another groups? How did you evaluate how well you were doing with groups as a group leader?
Well, I think each group had its own personality, its own chemistry, its own dynamics, and different issues arose in different groups. So each time an issue arose, I would learn how to deal with it because I would have to. I think one of the most important lessons I've learned in running groups is not to be a big blabbermouth know-it-all, to just kind of sit back and shut up a lot of the time and trust that other people will come up with ideas. Because having run so many groups, I do have a lot of ideas. If someone says, any field that someone wants to do, I'm going to have a lot of ideas about it because I've already heard multiple groups brainstorming about some other, maybe the same careers. But if I sit there and go on and on about all the things I know, it's going to completely stifle the entire group. And they're not going to feel good. They're not going to feel powerful. They're not going to feel that their opinions are worth anything if I act like a know-it-all. So I think as I've run groups longer and longer and longer, I'm quieter and quieter and quieter.
Oh, interesting. So you are listening a lot and learning from people in the group.
Yeah, it's not always easy. Sometimes, let's say someone is stuck in some way, and let's say I might have some really ideas that I think would be really helpful, but I'm going to purposely sit back longer than I want to. Because I want the other people to come up with ideas. I want them to. It's enjoyable to come up with ideas, and if I take that away from them, that's a lot to take away from them. So, I really try to make sure that they feel that we're all equal. We're all sitting together as an equal group, helping people one at a time. And I'm not the big person up on the throne, the know-it-all at all. I don't want to be in that role. It doesn't help them, and it also doesn't help them to continue on their own after the 8 weeks are up. I want them to be successful when they don't have me running them anymore. And the other thing about that is I think if the leader is too much taking over everything, sometimes they almost become like a parent, but not in a comfortable way. I want people to feel sort of grown up and confident and like they can do it. That they're not just leaning on me like a child, that they're adults and that they can certainly, I want them to ask me questions. I'm there for them, but at the same time, I want them to also feel that they're all there for each other equally as much as I'm there for them.
So what I'm hearing is that what you're saying, maybe the best asset, a best gift that you can give to one is enabling them to understand that they have all resources within to handle their own problems and their own concerns or questions. Is that true?
Not exactly. Not the resources within themselves, but the resources around them. Reach out to others. Ask questions. Don't be afraid to lean on others. That's a really important thing. There are a lot of people now who believe. There's a lot of talk about, you have to be confident. You have to believe in yourself, and then you can go after your goal and be strong. And I don't actually agree with that. And Barbara Sher doesn't either. You actually don't have to be confident to go after what you want, and you don't even have to love yourself. And this is different than what this is not what you usually hear. But if you read books by people who did things they really wanted to do, and you read a few of those books, you find out pretty fast that they weren't confident the whole time at all. They were just human beings. They had their ups and their downs. They had bad days, they had good days. But what they also had is they had some sort of structure and some sort of support. And so that's a really important distinction, because if people are waiting forever to be able to love themselves every second, be confident every second, they're never going to always be that way. None of us are. We're human beings. We have our ups and our downs and our quirks and our foibles. And I think people sometimes wait. They keep thinking, okay, I'm going to become perfectly centered and grounded and confident, and then I'll be able to do whatever I want. But it doesn't happen. They keep waiting and waiting and waiting because that's not natural.
Interesting. So what you're saying to us, tap into other people's resources and knowledge and ask for help. Is that true?
Absolutely. Ask for help. And don't
Okay.
think you have to do everything yourself.
I love that concept because, a lot of leaders, want to appear strong, want to appear, that they exactly what you said, know it all, they love it all, and what you're saying to us, it's okay to admit that you are still, figuring out yourself as you are, doing the things that you love to do or meant to do. Is that true?
That's right. Yes. One time after a success team meeting, we were all walking together to the elevator. Somebody in the group said to me, "You're always so cheerful and upbeat. Are you always like that?" I was like, "No, are you kidding me?" Of course I'm not always like that. You see me running a success team, and I love running success teams. So when I'm running a team, you're seeing that. But trust me, you can ask my wife, and she will tell you that sometimes when I'm attempting a new major project, I have ups and downs and roller coasters and doubting myself and resistance and the whole 9 yards.
Yeah, and I really like that because it does encourage people to start now, not wait for that ideal tomorrow.
That's right. And have things set up. And what I mean by that is this. We talked earlier about somebody who wants to be an artist, right? Now, there's some people that want to be artists, and in their apartment, buried in a box somewhere, they have maybe some paper and some pens and some paint, but it's buried, so it's hard to do. Barbara Sher would say, if you want to be an artist, get that easel set up and leave it set up, or have a table with all your art supplies just sitting out there all the time. And you can even take pressure off yourself by telling yourself you're going to set a timer for 5 minutes and you're going to draw a really awful picture. To get that pressure off yourself.
So don't try to be perfect. Just allow yourself to try it, because in trying you can understand how good you are or how what you need to do to get better. Is that true?
Yeah, and also by trying it, you're going to feel how much you love it.
That's
the only way you're going to feel.
Good concept.
You can talk about it forever, There was a man who came to see Barbara Sher, and at first it was hard to figure out what he really wanted. And it turned out that when he was in high school, he was really good at art. He loved ever since he was a child. He loved art. And she said to him, "Well, are you doing any art now?" He said, "Oh, no. I got a job as I think an accountant, and I have a family and a house and kids, and so I can't do art anymore." She said, "Now wait a minute," she said. "Why couldn't you do art a few minutes a day or even 5 minutes a week?" He goes, "No, didn't you hear what I said? I have a house and a wife and children. I can't." He goes, "No, wait, hold on." She said, "What if I asked you to do art for 5 seconds? Could you do that?" He said, "No, I have responsibilities now. I can't." So then she went in the other room. She got a piece of paper and she got a pencil and she came back in. She said, "I'm going to leave you in this room for 5 minutes by yourself. And I want you to draw a really awful picture of a cat." So she went away. She came back in. He was crying. And he had drawn a picture. And it wasn't awful, of course. It was wonderful. And he said, "Oh, my God, I can't believe all these years I didn't let myself do this."
Wow, what a wonderful. So really great message. Allow yourself to do what your heart desires you to do, right? Don't say to yourself, "I don't have time," right?
Yeah, don't say to yourself you don't have time. And here's the thing. I've had some people in groups who had really busy jobs and kids and family, and they were busy. They felt like they didn't have any breathing room at all. But what those people found is that when they brought the thing they loved into their life, even slightly, even half an hour a week, they had way more energy, not less.
Because you're more energized because you're doing things that you love to do.
Exactly. It's like changing your battery from a AAA battery to a D battery. It's gonna charge you up so much.
So I'm going to move into a little bit different direction now.
Yeah.
I know that you are very entrepreneurial person. You're the photographer. You also have written a play. I'd like to talk a little bit. How did you also walk dogs. How did you move from one thing to another so fluently? It seems like you want to pursue photography and you become very successful at it. Your photos are in the New York Times. And how did you make that happen?
Well, thanks to Barbara Sher, because I came into contact with her when I was only about 20 years old, and so that got that message into me very early that if something sparked my interest, try it out. Don't spend too much time analyzing it, wondering if you deserve it, if you should do it, if you shouldn't do it, blah blah blah. Do it and try it, and that's how I always ran my life. So when I was singing opera towards the end of that whole 15 years of opera, I started to get this feeling like I wanted to do deeper acting. Even though opera has gotten better with acting, it still is not as deep as, in my opinion, as studying in an actual acting school and doing acting that's from the deepest part of yourself. And I was craving that. And so I said, okay, I'll take an acting class. So I did, and I loved it. And then I took another acting class. I said, wow, this is great. And then I went into a 2-year acting program. So, I tried one thing, and then my energy just soared through the roof. And then I tried another, and then I did the 2 years. And then at the end of the 2 years, I started auditioning. And, it just automatically went from one to the other. And when I say automatically, I don't mean that I didn't hit resistance, because I certainly hit resistance. I certainly did. I mean, before I went to the first acting audition, I was just, oh my God, I was so scared. But I knew from Barbara Sher, I knew that that's natural, that it didn't mean I shouldn't do it. That when you feel resistance, it's fear. And you can tell yourself when you're in resistance, oh my God, I don't want to do it anymore. I finally came to my senses. But I knew from running all these groups and seeing how it all works, go ahead and go to that audition. And then I did, and then it went really well, and it was great. And so after acting for about, I guess maybe 10 or 11 years, I always liked taking pictures since I was a little kid. I always had my camera, but I didn't know how to use a professional level camera with the settings. I just had a little, automatic camera. And I was always posting pictures on Facebook. And a good friend of mine said, look, I want you to photograph my wedding. And I said, you're crazy. I'm going to photograph your wedding? She was having this huge fancy wedding. The New York Times was actually covering it for that column they do about weddings. And I thought, I'm going to be standing here with this little Instamatic camera. I'm going to look like an idiot. And she kept bugging me. I kept saying, you're crazy. And so finally I said, she just pushed at me so hard. I wouldn't have done it otherwise. So this is again about this whole thing of structure and people outside ourselves. I would not have done this on my own. She just kept going after me. So I said, okay, I'll photograph your wedding. And then as the wedding was getting closer, I said to myself, okay, the New York Times is going to be there too, and they're going to have big fancy cameras, and I'm going to be standing there with this little silly looking camera. I better go and find myself a cheap, used, nice looking camera so I can at least pretend I look like a real photographer. So I went to the camera store and I bought a used a DSL camera. And then I got home with it, and I was like, I have no idea how to use this thing. I have no idea what I'm doing. So I went and I found a class in New York City at a place called Photo Manhattan on 14th Street. I went to the first class session, and it was so enjoyable that when I left, I was shaking. That's how exciting it was. And that was it. I did their wedding, went really well. I just kept taking tons of classes, and I just started getting hired more and more, because I think when you're in that energy of doing something that is really who you are and what you love, you do everything you can to do it. You want to do it. You love it. And even when you hit resistance, you still, there's a part of you that can feel how important it is. And so I kept going.
And what I'm hearing is like you are in energy of allowing yourself to do things that you are meant to do.
I allow myself, but I also reach out. Like, for example, you mentioned the play that I wrote about Jackie Kennedy. Now, that play, I wouldn't have written that on my own, in no way. The only reason I wrote it is because I had an audition for a director, and he noticed in my resume that I had played Jackie Kennedy in one episode of a Japanese TV show. So he said to me, it turned out he loved Jackie Kennedy, and he said, you should write a one-woman play about Jackie Kennedy. I kind of nodded and smiled, and then as I left the audition, I thought to myself, he's crazy, I'm not going to do that. But then I kept thinking about it, and so then I said to myself, okay, let me try reading a book about Jackie Kennedy. There's so much about her already. Do we really need something else? So I read this book, and I was so excited. And so that it happened again. It was like when I took the photography class. Something hit, and it felt right. But I still couldn't have written the play if I hadn't contacted a playwright I knew. And I said to her, look, can I convince you to teach a playwriting class? Because I have no idea how to write this play. And she said, well, if you can find me 6 students, you can be in for free. So I contacted everybody I knew who I thought might be interested. I got 6 students. I wrote the play in that class, and then it needed to have some further fine-tuning. So I said to her, look, Liza, her name is Liza Lentini. I said, do me a favor, can you teach a play development class? Because I'm not going to do anything else without your class. So what I'm saying is, no matter how much you love something, if you try to do it on your own, and especially if you especially love it, resistance is very likely going to stop you. And so many people end up giving themselves a hard time and blaming themselves. Oh, what's wrong with me? I must not really want it. I don't deserve it. They analyze themselves to death. And Barbara always says, don't overanalyze your goals. It's not that complicated. It's like a child that has a cookie in front of them, and they say, I want the cookie, and they go right for it.
So what I'm hearing is like just keep allowing yourself to experience things that you really have, love for.
Yeah, but sometimes you may not even feel that you can allow yourself. So not only do you need to allow yourself, but you need to connect with other people. You need to the right people. Because even if you might allow yourself one day, you may wake up the next day and say, oh my God, what was I thinking? I'm crazy. I mean, I think most people have experienced being deep in resistance. It's a very hard place to be in. But if you know that you're having coffee, let's say, with a friend 3 days later, and that they're always supportive of you, and you have this plan that you're going to tell them about this project you're doing, you're going to be much more likely to take more steps towards that project, knowing that they're there for you.
Got it. So what did you had the play on for 6 years on off-Broadway. You were performing it. It won many awards. What did you learn by, having that experience in your life?
Well, I think the biggest thing I learned in my life, my most enjoyable experiences have often been the ones that were sort of my own creative projects, where I had as much control of the creative part of it as possible, so it really felt like it was me expressing my own voice. And so when I had been doing the play for a little while, some very big producers got interested in it, and they wanted to take it on a sort of fancy commercial track, and which could potentially have led to Broadway. It would have been a commercial off Broadway to a European tour, and then possibly Broadway. You never know with these things, but I had a lot of meetings with them. They drew up a big contract. I got an agent, the whole 9 yards. But then I started to get this uncomfortable feeling because they kept wanting to change things about it. Like they wanted a different director. And I didn't feel good about that because the director and I collaborated so much as we rehearsed the play. I felt that it wasn't right when it got to a certain level to say, okay, thanks, bye. And so I really didn't want a different director. They wanted to change the title. I didn't like the titles. To me didn't reflect at all the play the way that I saw it. And so it had to do with just being true to myself. And I was feeling uncomfortable. I was waking up at night over and over again, really upset and uncomfortable. And I kept saying to myself, I should want this. Isn't this what every actor wants? Isn't this a dream come true? But I was unhappy. And so I had to just say, you know what? This whole process here is making me miserable. And so I said no. And I took a step back from it. And it was very, very difficult to do. But it was the right thing, and I ended up doing the play, for a few years after that on my own terms, and that was very rewarding.
Interesting. So what you're saying to us, when you feel that something, you have to stay, whether or not you're a leader or you're doing things that, part of the group, you do have to stay true to yourself, and you need to ask yourself, does this feel right to me?
Yeah, and I think that you can, in a way, it can be a very simple thing. It's not complicated. If you're having trouble sleeping at night and you feel uncomfortable a lot of the time and sad and angry in the middle of a project, it's possible. You may be having resistance. That's possible. But it's also possible that something about it is just not working for you. And so I think you have to really pay attention and listen and pay attention to yourself and pay attention even physically how you feel. Are you walking around all the time with your shoulders tied up in knots and distracted and unhappy and listen to yourself?
So one of the concepts that Barbara shared, I'm going back to the book, talked about a lot is fight or flight. I believe that's part of her book or maybe other book that I read. Can you talk to us a little bit how that fight or flight impacts how we deal with circumstances in our lives?
Yeah, definitely. So fight or flight is in actually quite a few books mention it, and when they having to do with people going after things they want, because our nervous systems are very primitive, and they don't really know the difference between a life-death threat or another type of thing that feels threatening. So, for example, let's say someone wants to write the book that they've been dreaming of, and they start to feel resistance and fear. It can actually feel life-threatening sometimes. It can feel that scary. And I think it helps people sometimes to know that our nervous system, in a way, is playing tricks on us. It's telling us, you're going to die. This is dangerous. And if you know that it's because the nervous system is primitive, that can help to say, you know what, nervous system, this is not real. My life is not in danger. I'm safe. It's okay. It's okay. It's really scary, but I'm going to get the support I need and know that this is not a life-death threat.
So then you have to sort of calm your nervous system down in order to take action that are necessary for that particular circumstance.
Yeah, and it could be, honestly, the praise makes us brave thing can definitely help calm the nervous system down. When somebody's feeling bad about their goal and unconfident and nervous and scared, and someone says to them, you know what, I can totally see you doing that goal. So easy to picture you doing that. You'd be great at it. Go ahead. How can I help you? What can I do to help you? That can turn everything around.
And getting support from people that really, appreciate what you do and are willing to be ear or some level of provide you with some level of guidance.
Yeah, I think people often forget how much other people like helping out. And people really like helping each other. It feels good. And many people find it embarrassing to ask for help. They think that they're supposed to do it without help. But nobody ever does any big goal without a whole lot of help. And if people think about things they've done already in their lives, if you really think about it, you'll realize how many other people were involved with it. We're not islands unto ourselves. We're connected. So that's what I'm getting at here.
Funny that you mentioned that. I actually interviewed Sun Yun-Sian, who wrote a book. It's called A Lunch Book, and she talked about leadership and generosity. And like exactly what you said, the gift of helping someone that actually, that works equally for the one that's gifting that gift and the one that's receiving that gift. So I'm really glad that you mentioned that as well, because sometimes people feel awkward to ask for help because they don't, like in particular, I feel awkward sometimes to ask for help because I don't want to put other people in some uncomfortable space or, having them possibly think, oh my God, I really cannot help her, but I have to do it now, because you might be thinking that you might be putting yourself in front of someone that might not have time for you.
Yeah, and I have to say, I think especially women, honestly, sometimes feel like they should always be helping everybody else. I mean, a lot of women are in that role where they don't know how. A lot of women, I think, have trouble saying no when somebody asks for help. So when I ask for help, I do it in a certain way. I'll say, I wonder if you might be able to help me with whatever it is, but don't worry at all if you can't. No pressure. I mean, I really emphasize no pressure. You really don't have. It's okay if you can't. I understand, but if you can, that's great too. But I don't want somebody to feel. If it's somebody who finds it impossible to say no, I don't want them to do it and feel and not feel good and feel any kind of they were pushed into anything. So I ask in a careful way. But most people are very happy to help. That's the thing. Most people are very happy to be asked.
Mm-hmm. Because it's part of giving, and they can sort of participate in the way I see it, you get to participate in someone else's, endeavors or someone else's, projects or.
Yeah, we're also good too with helping other people. We're also good at suggestions.
Mm-hmm.
That's the thing. It's so much easier to have ideas for other people, and it's fun. It's really fun to do it. And I think sometimes by giving other people lots of ideas, we also can feel more potential for ourselves.
And we just say that also Barbara talks about, staying curious and listening in. I think I was reading her book and I think she talked about it. Can you talk a little bit about concept of listening and being open to...
Yeah. Let's say someone has something they think it might be interesting to do. And you could say to yourself, I always thought it would be fun to do this, but I didn't because of this. So just a simple little flicker of a wish. For example, I actually have a crazy goal that I have not yet done. And it's so silly sounding, but I really have wanted it for a long time. Mm-hmm. And I always wanted to learn how to fix air conditioners. I have no idea why. It's wacky. It doesn't make any sense. And I actually one time posted on Facebook, I really would like, the truth of the matter is, except for today, I love my air conditioner today, but I try not to use it too often. It's not good for the environment. But nevertheless, I had this thing that I thought, maybe because I grew up in Washington, D.C., but sometimes we have these funny little quirky goals and we think, oh, I'm not going to why would I do this goal? What's the point? But it's amazing sometimes when you just pursue some little wacky goal, sometimes how it ends up making sense. It might fit into something else you want to do in a surprising way. You just never know.
Yeah, that's very true.
Trying it. It's just
exactly.
try it.
Just give it a try. And I think that's a very good, we're almost closing in on our show tonight. Any final thoughts for our listeners tonight?
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Number one thing is don't try to do your goal by yourself. Be careful who you tell your goal to. Choose people who you know are going to support you. Especially with family members, they can really say the wrong things, even as much as they love you. So protect your goal, nurture your goal, take really good care of it, and just keep reaching out for help and support. And know that if there's something that you want, it's because it's a gift that you have. Whether it feels like it right now, maybe you've never done it before, but if there's something that you keep loving and wanting, it's because it's part of who you are. And if you don't do it, you'll be depriving both yourself and the world.
And for leaders that are listening tonight, what will be your final thoughts, maybe?
I would say make sure that you let your team have plenty of time to share their opinions and really listen to them and sit back sometimes and don't say anything. Just sit. Even if there's some silent periods, just sit back and listen. And because sometimes people working for other people are shy and they don't say things right away. And sometimes you have to give a little space and wait and give people a chance to talk. Call on people who are the quietest so they have a chance to talk, so one person doesn't take over every single meeting. Notice the people who aren't saying anything.
Excellent. And the people, this was, again, if you, we talking to Andrea Reese. Andrea, how can they find you? How can they find your services? Can you give us websites, please?
Sure, definitely. So for the success teams, my website is, I'm going to spell it out. It's kind of long. It's AndreasSuccessTeams.com. So it's AndreasSuccessteams. AndreasSuccessTeams.com. And then my photography website is a little easier. It's Andrea's Eye. So I as in eyeball, AndreasEye.com.
And with that, thank you very much, Andrea, again, for being our guest tonight. Thank you all for listening to Leadership with Bianca Kovic Show. Wishing you a wonderful evening and great week ahead. Please join us next week, July 9th, for 9 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. Have a good night, and thank you all. Thank you, Andrea.
Thank you so much. Good night, everybody.
Have a good night.